We've all made FPL teams, but there's some players I'm seeing and I don't think they deserve to be in anyone's Game Week 1 team. Disclaimer, I am not an expert, this is just my opinion. Okay, I gotta say a few things before we get started. First off, this is my opinion. If you get angry, refer to the intro. I'm not claiming I'm right, I'm not claiming to be an expert. If you do get angry, just remember there is more to life than my opinion. Secondly, I am not here to make friends. I'm not here to be your pal. I'm here to tell you about FPL. That's it, okay? Okay, now I've laid out all the rules. Let's get into it. First off, we have Lacroix. Now, his ownership is just over 10%, not owned by a ton of you. And to be honest, I think Chelsea defenders are okay to go for. But Lacroix, his DEFCON numbers aren't going to be as good as they used to be at Crystal Palace under Glasner. Xabi Alonso and Chelsea are not a mid-table side. They're not going to be inviting attacks. They're not going to be inviting crosses into the box. In fact, Xabi Alonso has said before, he likes his midfielders to win the ball back early so defenders don't need to get involved. Also, at 5.5 million, Palestra and James are great options. Why would you go for a centre-back who costs 0.5 more? I don't understand it. Now, once again, I could be wrong, but for me, it just seems like Lacroix, if he does start every game, which he probably will, but we don't know for sure, it just seems like he's a waste of money because his DEFCONs aren't good and there's better options for 0.5 million cheaper. Next up, we have Konza. Now, Konza's been in a couple of my Game Week 1 drafts, so I may be a bit of a hypocrite putting him here. The only reason I think you should own Konza is if you plan on rotating him with a defender in Game Week 3 and 4. He pairs really well with a Maguire or a Luke Shaw, you know, a Man United defender, because they don't have the best Game Week 3 and 4, whereas Aston Villa do. Aston Villa do not have the best defence. Their defence was below average last season. Konza, yeah, he's 4.5 million, but he's not even good for goal involvements or DEFCONs. And like I've just said, he's not going to be oozing out clean sheets because Aston Villa don't look like they're getting any stronger at the back and their defence already wasn't that great in the first place. So for me, Konza at 17% ownership just seems a bit much. If you have him to rotate with another defender, great, but if he's in your team just to stay there and play every game week, I think you're making a mistake. Then we have Senesi. Now this one, I don't even think it's my opinion. I honestly think I'm stating facts here. Senesi costs 6 million. He may not even start in that Spurs back four. You've got Van de Ven and Van Heck who are looking like they'll start in that back four even if Romero leaves. I don't believe Senesi is going to start every game or even half of them. Once again, I'm not involved at Spurs, I could be wrong. And while Senesi was amazing for FPL last season, as a defender, it's not like he's the best thing since sliced bread. Looking at Bournemouth, not last season, the season before in the 24-25 season, Senesi wasn't even the starting centre-back. I remember they had Zabani and someone else, Huijsen. They were the starting centre-backs and Senesi was the backup. He's not a world beater. His DEFCONs will also take a massive hit. I'm sorry to say, guys, but a De Zerbi team with a strong midfield, Fernandes, Tonali, a decent back line, that team's not going to generate loads of DEFCONs. De Zerbi won't want that. He's slow in build-up. He aims to keep possession in a lot of games. They won't be inviting crosses. So Senesi may not even start, and he probably won't get as many DEFCONs even if he does. At 6 million, if you want a Spurs defender, just go for Van Heck. We go on to the midfield, and guys, honestly, it just gets more and more controversial. Cole Palmer is not worth 9.5 million to me. If Cole Palmer was 8 million, I'd still prefer Mbeumo in Game Week 1. If he was 8.5 million, I'd still prefer Semenyo. I think he's a good player, like he's not bad, and he could improve under Xabi Alonso. But for 9.5 million, I'm going to need to see some proof before I put all my funds there. Not to mention, he kind of had a poor season last season, paired with injuries. The non-penalty expected goals aren't great either. 0.27 non-penalty expected goals per 90 for a player costing this much seems a bit too expensive in my opinion. The Chelsea opening fixtures aren't bad. They play away to Arsenal in Game Week 3. That's about the only bad one there. The rest are decent. But I'm not even thinking about the fixtures for Cole Palmer because I don't think he's worth the money in the first place. Now, Cunha, it was hard putting him here. Some of you guys know I'm a Manchester United fan. But at 8 million, I think Mbeumo is just a better option. First off, Cunha won't start every game. I'm not the manager. I'm a Man United fan. I'm not involved in the club. So this is just what I'm thinking. But before Dorgu got injured last season, Dorgu was starting a lot of games at left wing, even when Cunha was fully fit. The matchup will really shape Carrick's opinion on who he chooses to actually start at left wing. Sometimes he will want to use Dorgu. I don't believe Cunha's going to start every game, and that's the only reason why I've put him here in the overrated video. I think when he starts, he's going to be a great player, and he's not someone that's going to make no impact off the bench if he does come on as a sub. But in FPL, you want players who are starting games regularly, and I don't think Cunha is that guy. That's just my opinion. I think I'm right. Obviously, I think I'm right. That's why I'm saying it. But remember, I am not Michael Carrick. I don't know for sure. But if you look last season, it doesn't seem like Cunha's going to be starting every game. One thing I will say is good about Cunha is that despite him not starting every game last season, he had the second most shots in the league last season behind only Erling Haaland, which is a really good sign. Even though sometimes there were low XG shots, you know, he keeps buying himself lottery tickets, and as an FPL manager who owns Cunha, you would also be a part of those lottery tickets, if what I'm saying makes sense. Just beware of his game time and the reliability of him actually starting. We have Sarr next. Now, first off, no matter how you try and paint this picture, like I've seen some people do, Crystal Palace do not have a good opening 5 game weeks. That's not my opinion. Based on the underlying data of teams in the league, it's just true. Crystal Palace do not have a good opening 5 game weeks except for 1 game week in game week 4. Ismaila Sarr is an okay player, but he does miss big chances. He also isn't a very high volume shooter like Cunha. Ismaila Sarr had less shots than Casemiro last season. Sarr's big chances do come at, runs towards the back post. Real big chance situations. He doesn't get 10 shots a game. Well, no one gets 10 shots a game, okay? But you know what I'm trying to say. He doesn't get many. When he does, it's usually a high quality opportunity. My issue with Sarr is that he has a tendency to miss these high quality opportunities too often. The thought of owning him just worries me. Even though his underlying data isn't bad, I can't rely on him to actually finish his chances. Not to mention at his price, 6.5 million, I can think of several options that I prefer. Harry Wilson, Dewsbury Hall, Ndai, Lafay, James Garner if he's fit. That's just to name a few. Once again, just my opinion, don't get angry. On to the forwards now, and Brobby is easily the most rage-inducing one here. First off, I want to say, Brobby for game week 1 and 2 is good. He's a good player to own for game week 1 and 2 because he has 2 good fixtures. What's not good is owning a player for 2 game weeks then having to sell them. You don't want a player who's just a transfer out waiting to happen, and that's what Brobby is. Guys, the Sunderland attack isn't good. Sunderland were 18th for expected goals last season. That's really bad. Only Wolves and Burnley were worse. I just think 19% ownership is a bit too much for me. Like, Calvert-Lewin is a really good option for 6 million compared to Brobby because Calvert-Lewin can actually sit in your team for a long time. Brobby costs the same amount of money. XG numbers aren't as good. Fair enough, he can actually finish, unlike Calvert-Lewin, but there's no penalties there for him. And the Sunderland attack, like I said, it's bad. Whereas Leeds are strengthening up top. They've gone and got Harry Wilson. They've even got a solid back line. So for me, I don't see why you'd own Brobby over Calvert-Lewin. Unless you're owning both, maybe I'd understand it. But once again, he's just a transfer out waiting to happen, and for me, that's not good enough. We then have Gyökeres. At 7.5 million, it's not the worst price in the world for an Arsenal striker, someone who's supposed to be a great goal scorer. The issue is he didn't adapt well to the Premier League. He took some penalties last season, but some of those penalties were taken when Saka was injured. We can't say for sure that Gyökeres is on 100% of penalties. I think it's once again going to be one of those where it's just a 50-50 split based on maybe who's going for a hat-trick or who's not scored in a while. The main issue with Gyökeres though is he is a rotation risk. He will not start every game over Havertz. It won't be 50-50. I do believe Gyökeres will start more than Havertz. I'm not going to sit here and say Gyökeres is a huge rotation risk, but at 7.5 million, you don't want a player that's at risk of being on the bench every game week. Another big issue for Gyökeres is that most of his goals last season came against the bottom 5 sides in the Premier League. He rarely scored against opponents that were at least average. You know, when it came to the teams that were good or the teams that could at least hold their own, you know, teams that aren't Burnley, Wolves, West Ham, etc., he didn't do too well at all. So game week 1, I think he could be quite good. But after that, I don't see him doing well at all. And when you look at someone like João Pedro, who also cost 7.5 million, for me, I just can't think why you would go for Gyökeres. And finally, we have Mateta. Very similar qualities to Sarr. First off, Palace have a new manager, they may get worse. Their fixtures, they're not great, and Mateta, like Sarr, also enjoys underperforming his expected goals. One thing he does have going for him is that he is on penalties, and he does generate expected goals, yes. And on a good fixture run, Mateta could be a decent player to own. But I'd need to see how Crystal Palace are doing, you know, at least for a few game weeks. Anyway, guys, that is my list. Make sure you check out some of my other preseason videos. I made a video on players who are underpriced, which is quite similar to this one. You know, instead of talking about players who are overrated, we're talking about players who are really good value, some more positivity, you know. If you did make it this far, You are greatly appreciated, and I will see you all in the next video.